Welcome viewers once again to our channel. Today we are going to see how we can develop our first application, which is Hello World. And you're excited? Me, I'm so excited to see how we can develop our first Hello World applications using Flutter. Let's dive into the code and see how we can develop and achieve our first application, which is Hello World. In this video, we will be looking at step-by-step process on how to create our first Hello World application using Flutter. So tune in as we launch into the practical part of it coming up right now. Today we're going to see how we can create Hello World application using Flutter in Xcode editor. So as you see on my screen, I have an emulator with an Hello World application launched. This is an example of what we are going to be creating step by step. But as before I go any further, remember in Flutter, in our previous video, we looked at Flutter being the platform that we are going to use to create our cross-platform application that can run on both iOS and Android. So how do we do that? Remember we said Flutter is a mobile app SDK designed by Google, which helps in creating modern mobile application that can run on both iOS and Android with one base code or with one single base code. And the programming language of Flutter is Dart. Dart is similar to a JavaScript. Having known that, remember that everything in Flutter is a widget. We develop application in Flutter using widgets. So everything in Flutter is widget, and widgets are the building blocks of any Flutter app, of any app in Flutter. And the examples of widgets include, there have varieties of widgets, and one of them is we have buttons, we have text input, we have text widgets, we have input field widgets, we have dialog widgets, we have card views widgets, we have action buttons, we have tab bar views, tab bar. So all these ones are widgets that are bundled in Flutter. So we can use them and develop our applications in Flutter. So before we develop our first application, we have to know that in Flutter, as we said before, has two main types of widgets, and those are material design and those are the packages that contain widgets in Flutter that helps us to develop applications. And for now, this lecture will be looking at material design. And in material design, remember we have different types of widgets, and with this, the two main types of widgets that are included in material design, stateless widget and stateful widget. These are the main types in material design that we use to create applications. We will be focusing more on stateless widgets so that we can get used with widgets and see how we can develop apps using widgets before we go to a stateful widget. We look at it in our upcoming videos, but for now we'll see how we can create applications using the stateless widget. And what is a stateless widget? This is a widget that can only be drawn when another widget is loaded. So we cannot redraw the widget when depending on any event or user actions. On the other hand, a stateless widget is a widget that contains static data, or it's a widget that has no internal state. As you see here in this structure that we have on our screen, this structure represents our app. This is how the app is made. And if you understand the structure, then you can design the application. It's just a simple structure with a simple hello world app, and this structure represents what we are going to go through to create the app. So it's a simple structure, and if we understand it, we will be able to create any application in Flutter, no matter how complex the app will be. So before I go any further, apps are created in Flutter using Material App. Let me open an Xcode and we see the sample app that we have. Here we have our main.dat file, and this is the sample code of our application. Here our hello world will only contain one file or one page, which will be main.dat. We will only work with only one file or one page, one single file, which is called main.dat, to implement or to write our first hello world application. So Flutter has a main.dat file, which we will use in creating our first application. So everything, our code will be in only one single file. As you see here, I told you it's a one single basic code application. So this is the file and this is the code. It's only one code and one file that we have, which represents our application that we are going to develop. So having known that, in Flutter we have what we call the main function. The main function is the entry point to the app, or you can say which calls run app method. This is the run app method that inflates the screen with a number of widgets. We create a class which holds our, you can call it a wrapper, or a class which holds, which handles, or which inflates the screen with widgets, where we can put a number of widgets under that one class. So as you see here, I've created my class, which is my app class, which extends a stateless widget. I told you that we are going to be looking more at stateless widget and see how we can use them as we get used to creating application using stateless widget. In our further videos, we'll see how we can use stateful widgets. So as you see here, we have our class, which is this one, and extends a stateless widget. And under stateless widget, we overwrite this class with a widget with a builder. So we start building with the widget builder. We overwrite the class with the widget, and in a bracket we put a context. Then after creating a context, then we return our material app. So let's start from there. As you see in this structure, we have material app. Material app is the basic, you can call it, is material app implements the basic material design visual layout structure. Because someone will say, what is a material app? So material app implements the basic material design visual layout structure. So having known that, it's also a widget that wraps a number of widgets that are used, that are commonly required for application implementing material design. So we have in our material design, we have a tree whereby we have a title. We can define a title under material app, and we have a theme data. Theme data just represents the theme, the appearance of our application, how we want it to appear, the authenticity between the Android and the iOS platforms. So we define it using theme data. And also we can define what is called the home. The home is where people land, the landing page. We define the landing page, where if somebody launches the application, where is he going to land from. So we define the home. And under home we have a scaffold widget. This is a widget that contains a number of widgets which are already designed. For example, we have the app bar, have the body, and we have the container. Though we can create from the home, we can create a container and try to redefine, to recreate our status bar, and we create our own body, but that will be reinventing the wheel, because Google has already designed for us widgets which can help us to quicken the work and move on, than for us trying to create our own app bar and our own body, container, and so forth. So we use the scaffold widget, which has all these embedded for us, whereby you see this is the app bar that I'm talking about. So if we don't use a scaffold, it means we have to create this. We have to create our own app bar and our own body. This is the body that you see, and this is the app bar. So scaffold widget helps us create our helps us make our work more easier than trying to reinvent the wheel. So let's dive into the code and see how we can achieve our application. I've shown you the structure and I've shown you the app. This structure represents this app. This is how we done. This app starts with the material app, goes to defines the title, we define the theme data, we define the appearance of the app, we define the body which you see here, then we define the app bar which you see here, then we define the body, we define the container. The container is you can refer container to something like a div in HTML5 or a table in HTML. So we have also the center widget, which helps us to center texts. Like as you see here, this text is centered, but for us to center this text, we have to use a center widget for us to be able to center that text, that entire container, that this text into the middle of the page. So let's go on and see how we can create this one in Xcode. In Visual Studio. Okay, as we see here in our editor, we have this code, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this code, and we'll have a plain document without anything. As I told you that Flutter has only one main file. This app will be using one file to create our first hello world, which is main.dat file. As you see, we have one file that we are going to use in our creation of hello world application. So here we have main.dat file, and remember, in this file, in Flutter, before we do anything, we have to import the package or the library called material.dat file. So in our hello world, we start by importing our library, which is material.dat, containing a set of widgets implementing or that implements material design. I repeat. Here we start by importing a package or library called material.dat containing a set of widgets or a number of widgets that implements material design. So having known that, remember I told you that our application starts with a function called main. So we have a function called main, and this function is the entry point to the app that calls run app method, which inflates the screen with a set of or a number of widgets. Good. So having known that, let's go ahead and create our function. So as you see here, I've created our function main, which is the entry point to the app and calls the method, our method called run app method, that inflates the screen with the widgets. So for us to be able to inflate the screen with the widgets, number of widgets, we have to have a wrapper or a class. So here we create our we define our class as my app, and this is the wrapper, or it's also the same as a widget. We create another widget. In this method we create a widget which is my app widget. So let's go ahead and define that widget. Start by class my app that extends a stateless widget, which is overridden by a widget builder, define a context for our widget. Then after defining the things, we return material app. So before I go any further, let's add something here. Remember I told you that material app implements the basic material design visual layout structure. A widget that wraps a number of widgets implementing material design. If we are to build any app in Flutter, we need material design. So any app built in Flutter starts with a widget which is called material app. So for us to build any application in Flutter, we need what is known as material app. So having known that, let's go ahead and create our app. See, we'll be having material app. We'll define the title, and the title of our app will be world, and there after that we'll define the theme data, which will contain canvas color. We'll define the canvas color. be colors dot, maybe I will call it amber. I'll define that one. Then we'll define the platform. So platform, then we define the target. Let's say the target platform is iOS. So after defining that, we go ahead and create the home. So the home, I told you the home is where somebody lands when he has launched the app. So in our home, instead for us trying to recreate the appearance of the app from scratch, we can use a widget called scaffold. So here I can say new scaffold widget. Then in scaffold I have the app bar, new app bar. Then here I will say title. We'll define the title, new text. The reason why I'm defining title, because we have to have attributes. We have to define attributes like align, center, and all that. We can only achieve them by using the widget called text. So a text widget helps us to define the attributes of our text. If you want it to be centered, to give it the color, to give it the style, give it the font. So all that are involved in our text widget here. So here we'll say welcome. Now you can say hello world. So after defining that, you can go ahead and define the background of our background, which will be background colors that can call it amber accent. And maybe this one I can change it to red accent, and this is after defining that. We defined our title. Our app that is finished. We go ahead and define the body. So the body is where we are going to put our content of the body. So we go ahead and say new container, and under container we have a child called new center, and after defining the center, we say the center will have a child which will be new text. So here we define our text as welcome to my first app. So here we say align, align center. Then we have something like style, then text style. We have the font size to be, let's say 40, maybe that and draw. Then have color, colors that we can give it black, that one. So having defined that, let's try to run our app itself and run the application and see what we are going to have. That's powerful. We have created our first app. This is our first app. So Wow, congratulations for us for having created our first application. I'm so excited to have been able to create my first Hello World application. So from now onwards, we are going to see how we can create more complex applications using Flutter. So let's meet in our next lecture as we go deeper and see how we can create applications using Flutter. See you in my next video. If you have any query or any where you didn't understand, please comment in the comment box below and I will get back to you. And another thing you have to say, you know, that if you never understood or you want to follow along with the code, the link is in the description below. You follow me on the GitHub and you'll find the code that we have used to create our first application. It's already on the GitHub. You can click there and go and download the code and go through what we have done. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe on our channel for more videos.